The red dust kicked up by Corporal Jones's boots choked the air. "Contact! Left flank! Fast movers!" His voice crackled over the short-range comms, tight with panic. Captain Ava Rostova didn't need the warning. She'd seen the shimmer, like heat haze gone wrong, just before two impossibly tall, thin figures burst from behind the rock formation they'd passed moments ago. They weren't running like humans. They flowed, covering ground with terrifying speed. Silver suits gleamed under the harsh glare of the twin suns of Kepler 186F. "Go! Go! Go!" Eva yelled, shoving Specialist Lee forward. Lee, their scout, was already moving, his smaller frame darting between jagged crimson boulders. Jones lumbered behind, his heavier pack bouncing. A beam of searing blue light flashed past Eva's head, hitting the rock beside her. Stone exploded into superheated grit. "They're not messing around," Jones shouted, his breath already ragged. These were the Striders, as Intel had nicknamed them. Fast, technologically advanced, and utterly lethal. Their reconnaissance mission, map this supposedly empty region, had gone completely wrong. They scrambled down a loose scree slope, rocks tumbling around them. Eva risked a glance back. The two Striders were already halfway down the slope, moving with an eerie, leg-blurring speed that made her stomach clench. They looked like metallic insects, joints moving too quickly, too precisely. "Can't hide, Captain," Lee gasped, pulling himself behind a larger boulder. "Their scanners will pick us up in seconds." "Won't outrun them either, not like this," Jones added, leaning against the rock, chest heaving. The heat was already intense, pressing down like a physical weight, even though the morning was young. Eva looked at her team. Fear was plain on their faces, mingling with the dust and sweat. She felt it too, cold and sharp under her ribs, but hiding was death. Trying to fight back with their standard projectile rifles against energy weapons and blinding speed was suicide. They had one thing the Striders didn't seem built for. She thought of the old stories from Earth, before space travel. Hunters chasing antelope for days across the hot plains, not with speed, but with sheer, stubborn endurance. Persistence hunting. "We don't hide," Eva commanded, her voice gaining strength, "and we don't sprint ourselves into the ground." Lee and Jones looked at her, confused. "We run," Eva said, pointing towards the rising foothills that shimmered in the distance, leading towards higher, rougher ground. "We keep moving. Steady pace. We make them keep coming." Another blue beam screamed past, closer this time. "Move out," Eva ordered, pushing off the boulder. She set a hard but sustainable pace. Not a sprint, but a ground-eating jog. It felt wrong, deliberately staying exposed, deliberately choosing a pace that felt too slow against such fast enemies. But it was their only chance. They burst from the cover of the boulders onto a flat, sun-baked plain stretching towards the hills. Behind them, the Striders paused for just a second at the bottom of the slope, perhaps surprised the prey wasn't trying to hide. Then they surged forward again, closing the distance with frightening ease. The chase was on. The flat ground offered no cover, only exposure. Eva focused on her breathing, trying to find a rhythm. Inhale, 2 strides. Exhale, 2 strides. Beside her, Lee moved with practiced ease, his eyes scanning the shimmering horizon. Jones, carrying the heaviest gear, grunted with effort, his face already slick with sweat. Behind them, the metallic thrum of the Striders' rapid steps was a constant reminder. They weren't far back. Too close. Eva could feel the hairs on her neck prickle, expecting another energy blast at any second. But none came just yet. It was like the aliens were pacing them, confident they could close the final gap whenever they pleased. The foothills loomed closer, maybe 2 kilometers away. They looked steep and rocky, offering shade, but also much harder climbing. That was the goal. Flat ground favored the aliens' speed. Rough terrain might slow them down, force them to work harder. They paused back there, Lee panted, glancing over his shoulder quickly. Just for a moment, after that first slope. Noticed, Eva replied, her voice tight, like they needed to catch their breath. Don't know if they breathe like us, Captain, Jones grumbled, but they definitely stopped. It was a tiny detail, but it lodged in Eva's mind. Why stop if you had such an advantage? Overconfidence? Or something else? They reached a shallow ditch, maybe an old water runoff channel. Eva signaled, and they half slid, half jumped into it, crouching low for a precious few seconds out of direct sight. The sun beat down, reflecting off the pale red soil. The air felt thick, heavy. Okay, listen up, Eva said quickly, keeping her voice low. She pulled a canteen and took a short, careful sip, swishing the water before swallowing. Lee, you saw them pause. Jones, you feel this heat? We feel it, but we're built for it. We sweat, we cool down. It's how our ancestors hunted. She looked at their faces, seeing comprehension dawn alongside the exhaustion. These things are fast, yes, blindingly fast. But maybe speed is all they have. Like a drag racer. Incredible acceleration. But it can't run a marathon. You think we can outlast them? Lee asked, wiping sweat from his brow with a dusty sleeve. The fabric came away dark. We have to, Eva stated. Look at them. She risked peering over the edge of the ditch. The two striders had slowed their approach, standing about 300 meters back. They weren't moving with the same fluid grace as before. One seemed to be adjusting something on its forearm panel. Were their suits working overtime to cool them? They rely on tech, speed. We rely on this. She thumped her own chest. Stubbornness, endurance. We keep a steady pace. We head for those hills, find the roughest, hottest path we can. We force them to keep chasing, keep burning whatever energy they use, keep overheating. Make them hunt us until they break, Jones finished, a grim understanding in his eyes. He checked his rifle, not out of hope for a stand-up fight, but perhaps for a final, desperate measure if needed. Exactly, Eva confirmed. Manage your water. Watch each other for signs of heat stroke, dizziness, confusion. We stay steady. We push through. Let them burn themselves out, trying to catch us. The striders started moving again, their approach still fast, but perhaps just slightly less explosive than before. Or was that just hope? All right, Eva said, pushing herself up. No more stops unless we absolutely have to. Into the furnace. Let's show them what humans are made of. They scrambled out of the ditch and resumed their relentless jog towards the rising, rocky terrain, the twin suns climbing higher in the sky, promising a brutal afternoon ahead. The real test was just beginning. The foothills rose up sharply, a jumble of sun-baked rock and thorny, low-growing bushes. The ground underfoot changed from packed dust to loose gravel and sharp stones that threatened to turn an ankle with every step. The steady jog became a punishing climb, hands sometimes needed for balance on the steeper sections. Eva led them upwards, deliberately picking paths that offered little shade but maximum difficulty. The air grew hotter as the twin suns climbed towards their peak. Sweat drenched their uniforms, stinging their eyes and plastering fabric to their skin. Breathing became harder, each inhale feeling like sucking down fire. Behind them, the striders followed. Their initial agility served them well on the rocks, leaping between boulders with unnerving ease. But Eva noticed something. Their movements, while still fast, seemed less efficient, more jerky, like a machine starting to strain. They weren't flowing anymore. An hour passed, then another. The landscape became a monotonous blur of red rock and blinding sky. Thirst became a constant companion. Eva enforced strict water discipline, tiny sips, only when absolutely necessary. Muscles screamed in protest. Jones stumbled once, catching himself on a rock face, his face pale under the grime. Keep moving, Jones, Eva urged, not stopping, just slowing slightly until he regained his footing. Showing weakness, stopping for too long could be fatal. They had to project relentless forward motion. Lee pointed back during a brief scramble up a narrow gully. "Captain, look!" Ava risked a glance. One of the striders had stopped completely about 50 meters below. It was braced against a rock, its head bowed slightly. Even from this distance, she could see a faint shimmer around its silver suit, like heat rising off pavement. The other strider paused beside it, seeming to wait. After a few seconds, the stopped alien pushed itself upright and resumed the climb, but its movements were visibly slower, almost clumsy. "They're hurting," Lee breathed, a note of grim satisfaction in his voice. "Good," Eva grunted. "Keep climbing. Let's find the steepest, sunniest ridge we can." They pushed onward and upward. Eva felt a dull pounding start in her head. Heat, exhaustion. She recognized the signs. Drink more water? No, conserve it. Just push through. Mental fortitude. That was the human edge. They'd evolved under a hot sun, pushed their bodies for survival. Could these aliens, so reliant on their speed and tech, say the same? The striders fell further behind. They still moved in bursts, closing some distance, but the bursts were shorter now, the pauses between them longer. One of them actually slipped on a patch of loose shale, its metal limbs flailing for a moment before it recovered. Its partner didn't even try to help, just waited with that same unnerving stillness. Were they communicating, arguing, or just trying to manage their overheating systems? Eva focused on the next ridge, the next step. Her legs felt like lead. Her lungs burned. The world seemed to narrow down to the rock in front of her, the straining breath of Lee beside her, the heavy panting of Jones behind. But beneath the exhaustion, a cold, fierce hope was growing. The strategy was working. The hunters were tiring. They crested another rise, finding themselves on an exposed spine of rock with the suns beating down mercilessly. The heat radiating from the stone was intense. Below and behind them, maybe 100 meters back now, the two striders struggled up the slope. Their movements were definitely sluggish. One of them kept touching the side of its helmet, as if adjusting controls or wiping something away, if they even had faces under there. A faint, high-pitched whining sound drifted up on the hot air, maybe from their straining technology. "They don't like this," Jones wheezed, managing a grim smile. "They really don't like this at all." "Almost there," Eva lied, though she had no idea how close the extraction point really was. They just needed to break the pursuit. "Just need to push through this next section. Don't let them rest." She forced her aching legs into a faster walk, almost a stumble, along the exposed ridge. The heat was an enemy, but today it was also their greatest ally. They leaned into it, embracing the suck, while behind them, the technologically superior hunters were slowly, steadily being cooked. They navigated the narrow, sun-scorched ridge for another 20 minutes that felt like an eternity. Every step was agony. Eva's vision swam slightly at the edges. Jones was making small, concerning grunting noises with every exhale. Even Lee, usually the most agile, moved with a heavy weariness. But they kept going. Then, it happened. A loud clatter echoed up from below, followed by a high-pitched, drawn-out electronic screech. Eva risked a look back, bracing herself against a blistering rock outcrop. One of the striders lay sprawled on the slope they had just climbed. It wasn't moving. Its silver suit seemed duller, less reflective. The other strider stood over it, motionless for several seconds. It poked its fallen comrade with a foot, almost tentatively. The downed alien didn't react. The standing strider looked up towards the humans on the ridge. Even through the helmet visor, Eva imagined she could feel its frustration, its confusion. Its movements, when it finally started climbing again, were painfully slow. Gone was the effortless grace, replaced by a heavy, almost arthritic-looking limp. Its head swiveled back towards its fallen companion several times. It was alone now, and it was clearly struggling. "Captain," Lee breathed, his voice raspy. He didn't need to say more. They all saw it. One down, one crippled. Eva looked at Lee, then back at Jones, who had drawn level, his face a mask of dusty sweat and grim effort. Their eyes met. No words were needed. They were utterly exhausted, running on fumes, dehydrated, and overheated. But the hunter was worse off. The victory wasn't a shout of triumph. It was a silent, shared understanding that passed between them, a spark of fierce, almost feral satisfaction deep beneath the layers of pain and fatigue. They had done it. They had pushed the technologically superior aliens past their breaking point using nothing but flesh, bone, and sheer stubborn will. But the lone strider was still coming, still armed, still dangerous, even if weakened. Reaching the extraction point was the mission, but letting this thing recover or call for reinforcements, that wasn't an option. "All right," Eva said, her voice cracking slightly from thirst. "New plan." She scanned the terrain ahead. The ridge started to descend slightly into a shadowed ravine, choked with larger boulders and tougher, thicker scrub. It offered cover, but also potential ambush points. "Lee," Eva ordered, "you scout ahead into that ravine. Find us a choke point, something defensible for a minute." Lee nodded, understanding immediately. He summoned a last reserve of energy and moved ahead, disappearing quickly amongst the rocks. "Jones?" Eva turned to the bigger man. "You ready?" Jones hefted his rifle. It looked heavy even for him. He gave a short, sharp nod. "Been ready, Captain." Eva took a deep breath, the hot air searing her lungs. "Okay." We slow down, let it catch up, draw it into the ravine. She pulled her own sidearm, a standard kinetic pistol. It felt laughably inadequate against alien tech, but against a weakened, overheated target. Maybe. They deliberately slowed their pace, making their exhaustion look even more profound, stumbling slightly more than necessary. They descended from the exposed ridge into the slightly cooler, but still oppressive air of the ravine entrance. The lone strider, seeing its prey slowing, seemed to find a little more energy, quickening its limping pace slightly. It followed them down, drawn towards the shade and the seemingly collapsing humans. The hunter was becoming the hunted. The trap was being set. The exhaustion was still a heavy cloak, but now, underneath it, adrenaline began to mix with the grim determination. They weren't just prey anymore.